What up, apes? Today we're going to be going over a deck profile on our very first episode of Cheap, Fun, Effective. Decks that are cheap, fun, and effective. And today we have the Distilled Blast Gyarados from Team Up, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, starting off this Distilled Blast deck profile, let's start off with the numbers. We have 13 Pokemon, 24 trainers, and 23 energy. Starting off with our Pokemon, we have 4 Gary, we have 4 Magikarp, both of these are from Team Up, 2 Alolan Vulpix from Guardians Rising, 1 Tapu Lele from Guardians Rising, 1 Oranguru from Sun and Moon Base, and 1 Ditto Prism from Lost Thunder. Up next, we have for our trainers, 2 Professor Elms. We have a playset of Apricorn Maker. We have 2 Crasher Wake, 4 Ultra Ball, 2 Nest Ball, along with 4 Buff Padding, 3 Great Ball, and 3 Rescue Stretcher. And to round us off, we also have 23 energy. Now, 23 energy might sound like a lot, but we're going to go through and explain why it is you need these cards and why the heck should you have 23 energy in a deck. Your goal is to hit for 240 damage a turn with 1 single energy. Now, how you're going to do that is the cards. Now, you're looking at what the deck is built around, and that is this Distilled Blast Gyarados. Now, Distilled Blast, 30 plus for 1 water energy. Reveal the top 7 cards of your deck. This deck does 30 more damage times the amount of water energy you find there. Then, shuffle those energy cards back into your deck and discard the other cards. So, every time you use Distilled Blast, you don't know 2 things. 1, how much damage you're going to do, and 2, what is going to be discarded that isn't an energy. So you have to be kind of careful when you start rolling off Distilled Blast. Now, I chose to go with the Team Up Magikarp here that has 30 HP. It has a pretty nice attack called Enter the Dragon. For 1 energy, flip a coin. If heads, put a card that evolves from this Pokemon to from your discard pile onto this Pokemon to evolve it. Can be kind of nice when you're in a pinch and one of your Gyarados got knocked out and you need to bring it back from the graveyard, and they don't have an attacker set up to be able to knock out your Gyarados next turn. Now, if you fail the flip, chances are the Magikarp's going to be taken out, but at least it has that option if you have a Gyarados in the discard pile that you need to move forward. Next, we have the Beacon Alolan Vulpix. Now, what makes this very, very convenient for us is we need to be able to pull Pokemon out of our deck. Beacon does just that in helping us look for 2 Pokemon once per as an attack with no cost. Look for 2 Pokemon, reveal them, and then put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. Great way to end out your early game turns to get yourself Gyaradoses that you may not have yet, or to grab yourself this Lele. Lele, again, or Lele, not necessarily a required tool to have in this deck, but it is nice if you didn't, as a kind of a guarantee to get yourself the Professor Elms lecture turn 1, which is pretty nice, or if you're looking to thin your deck, or if you're looking to get buff pads, you can grab Crasher Wake. It's just a versatile tool to have, but is not a requirement in this deck. Then you have the Oranguru. I found that I found that my hand was usually quite thin, so Oranguru would help me with Instruct. Once during your turn before you attack, you may draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. I found that quite useful, considering I only have 4 Gyarados on the bench at a time. So having an Oranguru down there with Instruct was quite helpful, and of course, rounding it off with what is basically another pseudo Magikarp with Ditto Prism here, allowing us, in case one of our Magikarp gets knocked out, to evolve Gary on top of this Ditto here. Now, moving into our trainer section, we have the Professor Elms Lecture. Professor Elms Lecture states, search your deck for 3 Pokemon with 60 HP or less, reveal them, and then put them into your hand, then shuffle them back into your deck. I run 2 of these. Basically, you could run with 1 with Lele. I run 2 just in case I draw into 1, but basically I drop Lele, get Professor Elms Lecture, and drop 3 Magikarp on the bench, or I'll drop 2 Magikarp and 1 Alolan Vulpix if I don't already have an Alolan Vulpix. It's quite nice early game and really helps you set up your bench. You really want to be able to get your Pokemon essentially either in your hand or on the bench as fast as you can, so that when you start swinging it with Distilled Blast, you're not getting rid of key components that you're going to need, such as your Magikarp or Gyarados. Up next, we have the Apricorn Maker. You search your deck for up to 2 item cards that have the word ball in their name, reveal them, and then put them in your hand and shuffle your deck. This is an important tool to set up getting your basic Pokemon and or your Gyaradoses, or maybe you need your Oranguru, Ditto, Tapu Lele, all of your Pokemon. This is an important tool because we run 4 Ultra Ball, Nest Ball, and Great Ball. And let's say if you already have your Pokemon, it's also a good tool to help thin out your deck and get your Ultra Balls, Nest Balls, and Great Balls out of the deck. That way, you're increasing your odds for your Distilled Blast to be hitting on energies. Up next, we have Crasher Wake. Crasher Wake, discard 2 energy cards from your hand. If you do, search your deck for up to 2 cards, put them in your hand, and then shuffle your deck. What makes Crasher Wake really important moving forward is he's kind of a more guaranteed way for you to get your Buff Pads and Rescue Stretchers if you need them. Buff Pads I'll go over as well as Rescue Stretcher, but he's kind of like the tool that allows me to get those things if I haven't discarded them when I need them. Then up next, we have our 4 Ultra Balls. Pretty self-explanatory. Discard 2 cards from your hand. If you do, search for a Pokemon. Usually I'm doing this to find my Gyarados for the most part. The rest I can acquire using Nest Ball, Professor Elms, or Great Ball. You don't want to use Nest Ball, obviously, for Tapu Lele, because Lele has to come from your hand in order to use Wonder Tag. But other than that, Ultra Ball, always a very versatile thing to have in your deck. Then we have our Nest Balls here. Search for basics. I only run 2 because we have multiple ways to get basics. So it's not super necessary to have them, but they are nice to come across them. I try to make as much room for energy as I could, so I cut down to 2 on that. Then we have 4 Buff Pads. Buff Pads, if the Pokemon this card is attached to has a retreat cost of exactly 4, like our Gyarados does, it gets 50 plus HP. Pretty important. It gets your Gyarados out of that one-hit KO type scenario. Most Pokemon that you're going to be facing hit for like 120, 160, 180, 170, like within the underneath 180 range for the most part. And putting it up to 200 HP allows it to survive 1 extra turn, which can mean great things for you if that happens with the Buff Pads. Then you also have the Great Ball, another great tool to help thin out your deck and acquire Pokemon that you may need for your turn, as well as if you already have them, just getting them out of your deck using Apricorn Maker. It's a good discard to, again, continue to thin your deck out and make sure as many energies and as little trainers as you possibly can heading into late game if you already have your Pokemon. And Rescue Stretcher, very important tool. If you get your Magikarp or Gyarados knocked out, you can be able to recycle them back into your deck, which is a very powerful tool because your Gyarados and your Gyarados specifically is your main attacker. Once you run out of those, you're starting to look in trouble. You have Oranguru and Tapu Lele, but most importantly, your Gyarados is what you're going to be swinging in with, so you need to keep those alive and well with your Buff Pads, and if they get in trouble and they get knocked out, Rescue Stretcher them back in. Now, the early game goal is to get your Carps on the bench with your Vulpix as your active. Now, the reason why you want to do that is because you want to be able to end your turn, let's say if you're going second, with Beacon. That way you can get more Gyarados that you may not have acquired through your Apricorn Maker, your Ultra Balls, Nest Balls, or Great Balls throughout your turn. From there, coming back to turn 2, you should hopefully have at least 3 Magikarp on the bench for Professor Elms. Beaconed for 2, maybe 3. Beaconed for 2 Gyaradoses. Hopefully you acquired another Gary via Ultra Ball or Great Ball, something of that nature. So coming back turn 2, you're looking to evolve. You should be able to put 1 energy down to get Distilled Blast going. But I urge you, instead of getting that early Distilled Blast off, use your Vulpix, Beacon Vulpix, as long as you can to get the rest of your Pokemon out of your deck so that when you start using Distilled Blast, you're not getting rid of important Magikarps and Gyaradoses that you're going to need later. So again, really try and squeeze the most you can out of this Alolan Vulpix with Beacon before you start crashing it with the Distilled Blast. I promise you, it's going to net you higher damage returns, and you're not going to lose important key components that you need mid to late game. Now, up next, after you have your Gyarados out with an energy and you got your Pokemon out of your deck, you need to protect the Gary. So you're going to be looking for your Crasher Wakes to get buff padding, to start buff padding up your Gyarados. Getting up to that 200 HP mark is pretty helpful. So I would suggest trying to work on that in the mid game, get those buff pads, and focus on maybe even getting some rescue stretchers in your hand in the event that your Gyarados start getting knocked out. From that point on, you're looking at mid to late game, you're going to be focusing on thinning out your deck, getting everything you can out of the deck that isn't energies. As you Distill Blast, that's going to help thin your deck by every time you, again, Distill Blast, you 30 plus, and then it's, look at the top 7, and it does 30 more damage times the amount of energy you find there, but the energy gets shuffled back into your deck, whereas everything else gets discarded. So it helps kind of mill your deck of the things that aren't energy, but you need to also be trying to ramp that up yourself by using Apricorn Makers, looking for your Ultra Balls, Great Balls, getting those out of your deck, and just thinning those out as fast as you can, because the sooner you get to just energy in your deck, the better off you're going to be. Once you have thinned out your deck and you're in late game, output that sweet 1 energy DPS hitting for 240 damage with Distilled Blast with 7 energies. It's a whole lot of fun, let me tell you, and it's quite frustrating to go against when you have this high HP Pokemon and you're getting one-shot by some 1 energy stage 1. You take that Pokemon out in return. Next turn, guess what? Another Gyarados is right then and there, ready to go. 1 energy, boom, hitting for 240 again. Now, this deck is pretty cheap. This deck, minus the Lele, you could build for easily under $25. Now, with the Lele, depending upon what you get your price points on some of these other cards and your Lele, around $30 to $40. So if you want to build this deck exactly as is, you're looking at $30 to $40. If you take out the Tapu Lele and the Rangaroo, you're definitely under the $20 mark. The most expensive cards would be the Lele for $15, a Rangaroo for $8. Ditto, I believe, sits around $2 to $3. Everything else essentially either sits at under $1 or just above. Your trainers are quite cheap. Your Gyaradoses are $1 or just above. Your Magikarp Vulpixes, those are quite cheap. No real expensive trainers in the deck except for maybe the Professor Elms Lecture, sitting at around $1.25, $1.50, something around that range. But overall, a very cheap, fun, and effective deck. Enjoy. Check out the deck list below and let me know what you think.